Hello, my name is Janne Kauhanen, and I'm the host and saunamajuri of Cybersecurity Sauna. Today's special episode was recorded on site at the WithSecure Sphere 23 Cybersecurity On conference in Helsinki, where we had an opportunity to talk to some of the guest speakers. So I've just been joined by our guest speaker, Laura Koetzle, Vice President and Group Director at Forrester, and Robin Oldham, a CEO of consulting firm Cydea, to talk about how organizations can tell when security is paying off. So that's my question. Like, security is largely about stopping bad things from happening. Our victories are silent. Our failures are very public. So how can organizations assess the value of a result that produces nothing?
Well, I think you're probably right there. You know, a lot of security is obsessed with stopping or proving bad things, right? And probably one of the things that we need to learn and focus more on is making things go right instead of just proving that things can or do go wrong. And that'll give us more to celebrate, right? Because we're looking forward and what we're going to try and achieve. I often joke with clients that, you know, if security teams designed an aeroplane, it would have the most amazing protections, but it would never fly.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it would never be able to take off. So I'd kind of argue a successful security outcome doesn't produce nothing. It produces it helps the business achieve what it wants to achieve, or whatever your organization's goals are. So, and that is measurable, you know, in pounds, euros, dollars, customer satisfaction, the time it takes for them to go through your checkout process if you're a consumer retail business or something like that. You know, the decisions that we make to help protect the business do have impacts at the kind of business end of the spectrum, and that's where you can really join security to what the business is trying to achieve.
Yeah, that's right. And you have to make a bit of an effort to not fall into the, okay, we're keeping bad stuff from happening, and so the victories are silent approach, because that's kind of how it'll end up by default. And so, but there are always ways to think about how is security contributing to a particular business outcome, which is a lot of what we've been talking about here at the conference today. And so if you can set that link up and consistently communicate about it, as in, what are we doing in information security that contributes to fewer people dropping out of the checkout process, or more customers being able to successfully buy a particular product, or whatever it is. And so it's more of a communications challenge than it is anything else, honestly. And so for all of you who don't have security communications people, you should, if you can, because they can really help you figure out not just what kind of measurements do I want to set up, but how do I want to talk about them so that everybody in the business can understand what the contribution actually is and what it does.
So what are some of the more common obstacles that CISOs are facing when they're struggling to convince CEOs and boards and these people about the priorities of security?
So I think at the moment, right, if you ask this question at different points in time, you'll get different answers.
Sure.
So right now, one of the biggest challenges you'll face as a CISO is, hey, every single year you come back here and you tell me you need more money and more people to do a bunch of things that sound very important. But when do we finally get to a place where you are not asking me for 6% more money every year? Or 12% more money, or whatever it is.
Only 6?
Right, exactly. Let's be optimistic. And I think that's a very difficult question for a lot of CISOs to answer in a compelling way. So I will give a shot at what I think is a compelling answer, so that I give you something useful to walk away from this thing with, which is, it's not enough to say, oh, but there are more threats and more bad things are happening. Like, that's literally will go in one ear and out the other for the business stakeholders and CFOs that you're trying to talk to about this.
Yeah, we tried that. That didn't work.
Yeah, or it worked for a while, but then they stopped listening, like with anything else. And so I think what you have to go back to is you have to say, you have to combine that. Like, the world doesn't stand still, right? The attackers sadly get better every year at what they do, and more sophisticated. So we need to be more sophisticated in response. But what you also hopefully should be able to say is, okay, I totally understand where you're coming from on the whole I ask for more money every year thing. And I know that that's not excellent. But in addition to the attack, the sort of world of attacking gets more sophisticated, I'm building the foundation for the future. And so here is how the investment that you made last year and 2 years ago contributed to us being much better at what we're doing. And these are the business outcomes that we help deliver. And the 6% more that you're giving me this year is going to contribute to this set of business outcomes. Because of the money you're giving me this year, we're going to be able to reach 10% more customers that would have been like too risky for us to reach otherwise because of the characteristics that they have. So if you set it up that way, I think they'll hear you out.
So these are the outcomes your talk here at the Sphere event was talking about. So this is how you map sort of what you're trying to accomplish with your security to what the business is trying to accomplish.
Exactly. And the more direct you can make that link, as in, and Robin gave a really good example earlier with like, if you think about e-commerce and checkouts, right? So every e-commerce retailer in the universe has some sort of fraud management process that goes along with their checkout. And so if I'm coming through and I filled my cart with a bunch of stuff, but it looks like I'm using a credit card whose billing address is not in the same country where I claim to be. And when I was asked for the phone number associated with the account, I gave a different phone number. So you look for all the signals that, hey, this might be a potentially fraudulent transaction.
Okay.
The name of the game there is to set the threshold high enough so that you catch a bunch of fraud, but not so high that you catch a bunch of perfectly legitimate customers who happen to be on vacation or whatever it is. And so if you as a security person can say, we invested in these controls and these pieces of technology, and the number of, not only did the sort of amount of fraud we caught go up, but the number of customers who we chucked out of the checkout process who we shouldn't have, because they were just perfectly legitimate customers who happened to be on vacation or, fat fingered their phone number or whatever it was. And so we had less drop off out of the checkout process. That's real money in the coffers of the company, and also fewer grumpy customers who call and are like, why are you not letting me purchase this product? I have bought things from you 15 times before. What is wrong with you over there? So you can make that tie. If you can make that tie as direct as that, it'll really benefit you.
That's useful. So Robin, I wanted to hear from you. What do you think are the obstacles CISOs are facing and what can they do about them?
So I think there's a really large part that comes down to language, right? And there's some really interesting research conducted by NATO a few years back. And it was on the language used by intelligence analysts for, military probabilities and things like that. But I think it applies through into when you're talking about risk to the board as well. So they gave these analysts, thousands of them, different words and asked them to put a numeric percentage next to it. And they found, for example, that when you use the phrase likely, people think that it means anywhere between 30 and 80%. When you talk about probable, it's like 25 to 85%, right? Those are massive ranges. When you're turning up to the board and saying, hey, it's likely that we're going to face this risk in the next 12 months, like to you, it's 80%, to them, it's 30%. Like it's entirely possible to be on completely different pages using the same word. So trying to get away from kind of, or trying to quantify and put some numbers around these things can be really helpful in getting you on the same page. So you can be, clear about what you're asking for and why. And you can also do some really good maths on that kind of stuff as well. Like if you turn up and say, hey, we've got, 17 greens, 7 ambers and 3 reds, like what does that add up to? Like, brown is the answer.
Everything's brown.
Whereas if you turn up and say, hey, we've got these different things and these are the probabilities of them. And so on balance, this is kind of what we're looking at. And this is the cost of doing something. Well, now you're talking their language and you can, you're not expecting them to come and speak security. You're telling yourself as a CISO to help mature our program and to get better outcomes. I'm going to improve myself and our program by learning to speak finance, the language of the business, and what that means to customer dropout rates on carts or revenue and those kind of things, not just our kind of inward facing threats, vulnerabilities, risks, incidents, that kind of stuff.
So I think, we were talking about the extra 6% every year and maybe being a little bit optimistic. The reality for a lot of CISOs is they're expected to do more with less every year. And there is this sort of, companies are facing a lot of pressure to cut back on costs. And security, as we said, because it doesn't produce anything, it is like a very attractive target for savings and cutbacks. So is there an alternative or any advice you could give to organizations on how to get more out of their security spending?
So I think there are 2 things you can do. So One of the reasons I'm a big fan of the outcome-based approach to security is it can be really clarifying. So if your business has been around for a while and your security organization has been around for a while, you've built up a set of tools, a set of practices, a set of controls, whatever, that you've invested in over time. And very rarely do we go back and look at the investments that we made 4 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it is, and go, is this still fit for purpose?
Can we turn it off?
Yeah, exactly. Like, everybody likes to buy new things and turn them on. There's very little glory in turning stuff off, but there should be. Because and that's where outcome-based security can help, right? Because you look at, okay, here are the 3 things we're trying to achieve as a business. Does thing X help us achieve that outcome or not? If it does, is there an alternative, duplicative thing Y that is equally well helping us achieve that outcome? And so which one of them can I turn off? So that's a way to save some money and to save some headaches for your staff who are all trying to run around maintaining a very complex infrastructure, tools, and controls. And the more you can simplify the things for them, the better. And then the second thing that you have to do is get away from the whole security doesn't produce anything. That's our communications challenge, is linking security to the outcomes that it really does help deliver. And so that people aren't saying like, do we really need all this information security stuff? Because like, it's not actually doing anything. It's like, well, yes, it is. And here are all the things that it's doing that are sort of helping our business, not just like all the things that we all care passionately about keeping data safe, and keeping customers safe, whatever. Like your head of sales is hearing a whole lot of when you talk about those things.
Yeah.
But when you talk about fewer customers dropping out of the purchase process,
right.
More customers being able to access our products and services, the ability to enter what previously would have been viewed as too risky of a market because we have better information security and fraud management controls.
Right.
And if you can do those 2 things at the same time, that'll help you do more with less, really.
And I think I'd kind of add on that, because I think those are really, really important places to start. But one of the things that I'd add and kind of found works really, really well, and that every team should be asking, like, on a really regular basis, is like, what are we defending? Which is a different way of saying what's important, right? And compare what that means to you to what it means to, other teams, be it sales teams or marketing teams or, customer operations, or if you're in retail or energy or, whatever is important to your business, go and ask, like, what do you think is important? What are you defending? And what do they think is important? And what are they expecting you to defend? Because I've seen and helped organizations respond to quite a few incidents where the security team thought they were doing a great job at protecting all this stuff over here on the left-hand side. Meanwhile, the business was like, yeah, that was stuff that was important, 3, 4, 5 years ago. We've moved on. We've got this new channel that we're looking at, or, it's all about this stuff over here on the right. And you didn't even know that it existed, or you didn't realize that that's where their priority had shifted. So what are you defending is kind of that foundational thing to know whether you're even putting stuff in the right place. Like, otherwise, how do you even know whether you're putting the right controls in the right places to protect the right things? So,
but are companies mature enough to have that conversation, or is it just like, what are we protecting? Please protect the entire organization from everything.
So I think you need to push then and say, okay, right. So the whole organization. So great, we can do that, but not if you're asking us to cut back.
Right.
So if you're asking me to cut back, like, take the 10 things we do and put them in rank order, or tell me what the most important 5 are, and that's where we're going to focus our effort. Right. So I think that's a really important conversation to have on a regular basis, because threats are always changing, businesses are always changing. Right. So when was the last time you had an open dialogue with colleagues in the business about what's important and where you should be focusing your effort, and then use that to update your risk assessment, feed that back through? This is where we're going to put some time and effort. And I guess also remember that the CEO's job is to take your input along with everyone else's input and weigh that up and make the right call across the business. So if you're taking them the information to make that decision, and you can say, hey, we can save some money here, we can focus on this. That's not a failing on your part. If you've given them the information, they need to weigh that up against other investments they're making and other aspects of the business, and decide what's right for the, that's their decision. That's why they're in that seat. It's in many cases an unenviable position to be in, right? Because they're trying to balance all of these things, not just security, but, sales and, other business initiatives and things like that. And our job is to inform them and help them make those decisions.
There's a useful corollary to what Robin talked about at the beginning there, which is if any of you have ever been involved in a kind of disaster recovery or business continuity planning process, the exact same thing happens. So all the business stakeholders say, all of these systems are super duper critical. We want them to all recover in 2 milliseconds or fewer, and we want no data loss. And then you talk them through what that's going to cost. And you say, okay, I can do that, but like, here's how much money we have to invest. Then all of a sudden, everyone has more reasonable ideas about which things are actually critical and so on. Now, that's a little more complicated in the sort of security context because there are certain things that you can't cut back on to more than level X. Whereas your business stakeholders will be like, yeah, what do we need that for? It's like, well, okay, that's sort of baseline level protection. We will be violating actual laws if we stop doing those things. So like, we do not have the option of cutting that bit, and so on and so forth. But so you have to kind of, it's a little more complicated, but if they have experience with a business continuity management sort of preparation process, that may help them understand kind of how to think about this whole thing.
That makes sense to me. And I feel like this is a conversation we could keep going for forever. But unfortunately, this is all the time we have today. So thank you guys for being with us today and talking us through this topic. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.